Hi, Keaton.
Hey Nina,
This is
how are
Nina.
you? You doing good?
Hi. Good, good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining. I'm gonna
Okay.
send out a Zoom
Oh, no.
send out a little
Thank
message.
you for
Hey,
thank you for hosting.
yep.
Yes. I'm waiting for more people.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to mute.
No worries. Hey Neha, how are you?
I'm doing good, Ketan bhai. How are you?
I'm good. Hey Rishi, thanks for joining. Give me a minute. I was running late in traffic, so now I'm just catching up.
No worries, no worries.
We're gonna give everybody a few minutes to kind of join in. Hey Kavita, thanks for joining. Venkat, thank you. Venkat's almost joining.
Hi, Ketan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Hey Ketan, how are you?
I'm good, Rajita. How are you?
I am doing very well. Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
So has everybody read up on this NAR lawsuit? Everyone familiar with it?
Is this
Yes,
the
but
one
I
Yes.
wanted to hear from
Kind
you.
of.
Kind of. Good. Yeah, do read up on it or try to understand as much as we can on it. It is gonna, it will have an impact on our industry for sure. We just don't know how, and
Yeah.
timelines, but I mean, uh, you know, the one that started on October 16th, are you talking about the lawsuit or something else, Kavita?
I think the trial started on October the 16th.
You're right. Yeah. The trial did start on October 16th. Yep. I haven't been listening in on the trial yet. Um, you know, definitely want to try to at least see if I can get some kind of recording, or maybe hopefully if it's on YouTube or one of the government channels, I may jump on it and just kind of listen in on what's going on and so forth. All right. Hey, Madhu, thanks for joining. I'm going to give it a couple of more minutes, guys, and then we'll get started because there's a lot of material we're going to cover. And this is not going to be just a one-day session. It's actually going to be probably a multi-day session. So we're going to do one this week, we'll do one next week, and if there's any overflow, we'll probably do the rest of it the following week. So it's going to be, and we've done this before with some of our other training sessions where we keep it to an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, and cover as much as we can. And then we go in and do the rest of it the next week and the week after. So a lot of information. This is basically, leasing 101, as I would call it. We're going to cover literally everything from starting on running a CMA all the way to the back agent piece. So it's going to be extremely informative. Hopefully you guys will get something out of it. That's going to be the most important thing. Hey Rama, thanks for joining. All right, so I think we got enough to
Hi,
get
hi Ketan.
Hey, Rama. We got enough to get started, so I am gonna go ahead and share my.
Ketan, is this recording? This
Yes.
is going to be recorded? Okay.
Yes, it is recorded. I
That's
got
good.
it recording, so we're good there. Yep. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and share, and I am gonna put, so one thing I'm gonna do on this one is everything that we go over and everything that we cover, I'm actually gonna share that on our back agent under the quick links. And I'm gonna create a separate folder just for this, and I'm gonna call it the lease training package. So that way you guys will have, if you guys are on this call today, you're gonna know exactly where to go in order to kind of just navigate to see where the details and where the information is gonna be. So that's gonna be, hopefully, I'm hoping is gonna be useful to you guys long term as well. All right, can you guys see my screen? I hope you can.
Yes.
Assuming you are. All right, awesome, awesome. So this is basically what we call, you have your first listing, and the presentation is gonna actually go over not just the lease listing part of it, it's also covering some of the sales side of it. I am not gonna go over the sales side of it because these sessions are specific to landlord engagement, listing agreements, lease listing agreements, and so forth. So that is what we're gonna cover on these next 3 or hopefully 2 or 3 sessions. Let me get this into a slideshow format. All right, hopefully you guys can see this. All right, let's go. So here's just some of the topics that we're going to cover today, and actually the next few days. The introduction to your client, preparing the CMA, preparing the listing agreement, using professional photography, not necessary on the lease listing side. Obviously, the one thing you want to remember is every one of our listings, and this is something that you should be doing regardless. One of the biggest challenge, I mean, one of the biggest pet peeves of mine is when I see a listing, especially one of ours, and it doesn't have any pictures to it. You're really not doing any justice to your clients. I'll cover that. Then we're also going to go over the input on the MLS, showings, closing, and QA, and then of course the sample contracts. So we're actually going to do today, we're going to do the introduction, CMA, and hopefully if we get to at least some part of it, I want to cover the listing agreement as well. All right. So this is the first thing you want to do, right? When you're meeting up with your client. So first thing that happens, right? What usually happens, and this is going to be an interactive session. So I want you guys to engage as much as you can in the discussion piece. If you want to ask questions, just kind of interrupt me and ask questions, relevant questions to the topics that we're going over. Okay, that's going to be the most important thing. And then, that way we can kind of go over any questions you might have in between. The first thing, right, is identify the needs of your clients, right? So what are some of the reasons somebody may engage you as the realtor when they're getting ready to put their house on the market for lease? So anybody want to chime in and say, hey, this is, I remember, I'll start it off and I'll tell you, the most common reason is they are relocating. All right. So relocation is probably one of the biggest ones. Or the second one that I can think of, and I'll let you guys go on next, is they are moving from one house to another. They're either downsizing or they're upsizing, right? Or they're moving into a different area. What are some of the other reasons they might be engaging you to lease their property? Anybody want to chime in?
Yeah,
They
mostly.
bought investment property and that's why they want to lease it.
Very good. Absolutely. Investment properties are also very, very common, especially in today's market. One thing you'll see is a group of investors buy into a community where, obviously the first few that get into that community and lease it out are going to be the luckiest ones, because as the community continues to close out, meaning you get more and more closings from your landlords, there's going to be what we call a supply and demand curve, right? And that supply begins to increase. The demand may not be there. You have to be aware of that. You have to understand that, hey, and a lot of times these landlords talk to each other, especially investors. And what happens? It's like, hey, you leased that house out in 1 week. Why isn't my house leasing out? Well, there's 5 other houses in the same neighborhood at the same price. That happens a lot. So you got to be aware of what the market's doing. You're right. Investment properties. What else? What else could there be? Anybody know? So we talked about investments, personal. What about divorce? Right? A divorce situation where the divorce decree assigns the property to one or the other, right? One spouse or the other, where the other spouse doesn't necessarily wanna sell the house, right? Happens all the time. Why would they not sell the house instead of leasing it? What would be the reason for that? Anybody know?
Maybe because they're still waiting for the court to decide who's going to get the house.
Yeah, that's true. That could happen. What's another reason? I mean, what's been happening with the market over the past 3 years?
Blooming,
What is it?
blooming, went up a lot.
It's gone up a
Double
lot,
price.
right? And when
Yes.
the price goes up, what are most people gonna do?
They rather not sell it.
Right, and why is that? Hey, Geeta, I'm gonna put you on mute. Okay. And why is that? What are they anticipating at that point? What's gonna happen to the market? What do they think is gonna happen to the market?
Everything's still going up.
Exactly. Exactly. They're thinking, you know what? My property value went up by 100,000, 200,000. I know it's going to continue going up. So at that point, they're like, you know what? I'd rather just lease it than sell it. There's a lot of reasons. And the most important thing here is when you talk to your clients, try to understand why they really want to lease it. Hang on one second, guys. I'm going to put my phone on mute. Okay. And that also helps you understand the urgency of how soon they want to do it. Remember, if you've taken or if you've heard my first client communications class, you have to understand the why, right? And in understanding the why will tell you, how quickly they want to do something. If they're moving into another house, that might be another month or 2 months. Understand that and know that, hey, you know what? I got a little bit of flexibility in getting the details out and so forth. But if they're moving next week to, or if there's an emergency move that they need to do, then you have to understand that and say, all right, you know what? They need to move right away. So let me go ahead and put this house on the market right away. Urgency means one thing only. And what does that mean for us as realtors? What is the basis of urgency in real estate today? Anyone know?
Job layout.
No, so urgency means that you have to get it done right away. Otherwise, if you don't get it done right away, what are they going to do?
They look for other venues.
They're going to find another realtor that will do it right
Yes.
away. All right. So one thing that I've always taught you guys, and I want to make sure that you guys are aware of it, is don't delay on, when you have an opportunity, you got to embrace it and you got to take it as quickly as possible. And I used to do that. I mean, if somebody talked to me 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I would have the listing agreement and everything else out the door by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. Only because I know that if I don't do that, guess what? They're going to go to somebody else the next morning. All right. Next thing is identifying the property ownership. Pretty simple. There's multiple ways of identifying the property ownership. You can do it through the tax records. You can do it if you don't have tax records. What's another way of getting information about the property?
Property appraiser's office.
Which one? Go ahead, Rajita. Say it again.
Property appraiser's office.
Property. The property. You mean which one?
The property appraisers.
Yeah. Appraisal. Yeah. So yeah, the appraisal district.
Yes.
So let's say, okay, so what if you have a brand new contract and they just closed on it 2 days ago? You're not going to have any of the legal description. It's not going to be updated. What is the one thing that you or the landlord has to where they can then share that information with you? It's
Either copy of the deed or a closing document.
Or what's another one I'm looking for?
Closing disclosure.
No, so you got the closing disclosure, and that's great, and you got the deed, that's great, but there's a simple one that we're looking for. What is it? I just posted it.
MLS. Contract.
You got it, right? So if you don't have tax information, if you don't have the deed, I mean, hopefully you may not have the deed, because remember, that deed needs to be recorded. So Rajita, you're right. The closing disclosure is one way. At the end of the day, the easiest way to get everything is just say, hey, can you share the contract? Share what page? The first page or the page that has all the property information and your information on there. Guess what? That gives you how the contract's written, who the owners are. It gives you the lot, legal description, and everything else on it. That's all you need at the end of the day. So remember, if you don't have it, there are multiple ways of getting the details that you need in order to establish the listing agreement. One other thing I want to share with you guys on this is very simple. Do not, no matter, and this is a tip that I want to make sure that you guys are aware of. And that is, no matter how much your landlord insists on you, no matter how much the landlord insists on you putting the house on the market before he closes, do not do that. That has legal ramifications. Does everybody get that? You understand what I'm saying, right? Is don't put yourself in jeopardy. They don't own that property, and they don't own it until it closes. What if something happens and they don't close, and all of a sudden you got, not only is that you don't have the MLS, if you don't have the listing agreement, you can prepare everything, just don't publish it on the MLS. Does that make sense? I hope so. All right, let's move on. All right, so we're going to go through and just some of the steps that you need to do as far as evaluating the property, running a CMA. So as soon as possible, make sure that you visit the property. If it's a brand new house and it's getting ready to close, just find out from the landlord saying, hey, when are you closing? Can we go out there and visit the property? So that way, at least you are prepared to kind of understand if there's any additional features to it or any amenities that they have. You can know exactly where it's located compared to the community pool, community parks, things like that. So that's going to be important, and that is something that you have to do regardless, right? So you should visit the property. There's two ways of doing this. You can get the listing agreement prepared. You can send the listing agreement out to them, have them sign it. That way, at least you know that they're ready to go, and then tell them, hey, my next step is I got to go ahead and come out and take a look at the property. What time, when can we do this? So that way I can kind of get an idea on, on what information I'm going to publish on the MLS, as well as what information I'm going to share on social media and all that stuff. You'll have now, sometimes if it's a brand new property, you may not necessarily have the tax information, which means you may not have the square footage. So at that point, if you don't have it, what is another way of getting the square footage from the buyers or the landlord? Anybody know? What would be one way of getting the information from the buyers? Or the
Again, looking at the contract or
and so a lot of times,
mostly.
yep, no, the closing disclosure won't have square footage. The square footage will come with either, like, a lot of times they'll have that builder floor plan. It's an added,
Survey?
the builder floor plan, the builder floor plan.
Okay, correct, yeah.
So ask, and sometimes just ask them, what's the square footage? What's the size of the house? So that way you can compare. What is next? What do you guys do next after that? We run the CMA, right? You have to know where the value of that property is at the moment. So that is going to be our next step. I'm going to actually do a little bit of a hands-on, and I'm going to run a CMA for you guys. So my next question, does anybody have a property that is on the market today? I'll run it for the Dallas markets only because I have Netris up. But somebody want to share a listing that they have today that we can run, and I'm not going to cross-check your property. I'm going to find out more about it. So anybody got one that's on the market? Or that's coming on the market?
No.
Nothing?
Yes.
Anybody have one?
205
Yep. Hang on one second. 205
Hogue, Hogue.
Hogue.
Hogue Lane, Lane.
Okay, where's that, Shiny?
Wiley.
Okay, it's in Wiley. Excellent, excellent. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and, Shiny, you're going to be the lucky participant of a CMA that I'm going to run for you. How does that sound?
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, give me a second here. I'm gonna pull up 205 Hogue Lane. I'm gonna go into my MLS. We're gonna go to Netris. All right, Shiny, you're gonna be working with me on this. Where do I go next?
Residential, quick.
Yep, you got it. All right. Oh, actually, you know what? The first thing I want to do is,
Residential.
yeah, you're right. You're right. No, no. Yeah. So, but I'm going to do one thing first. I am actually going to pull the history on this house to find out more about it. All right. And I'm not going to look at yours. I did see yours here a second ago. All right. So here's where we are. So this is 205 Hogue Lane in Wiley. The square footage is 3,300 square feet, 2014. So now what I'm doing is I'm just pulling in the right details that I need in order to pull the CMA. So here's what I need. I have the address. Okay. I have the square footage. I have a price they bought it for. I don't know when yet, but I'm going to check it in a minute. I have the age and I have the subdivision. Right. Is there anything else I need to run my CMA? Anybody else? Should that be enough? I also need the city because that subdivision could be in multiple cities, right? If I'm looking at Cross Creek could be in Richardson, it could be in Wiley, it could be in Plano. So these are the criteria that I'm going to need in order to run my CMA: square footage, price, age, subdivision, and city. Then what I'm going to do,
And the
Year,
property style. Is it single family? Yeah.
very good. Thank you for that. You're right. So property style, what else?
year,
Pool, if the pool is there or no.
Which one? Oh, pool. Yeah,
Pool.
Yep, that's a good point. Very good point. Thanks, Rishi. That's right. I don't know who that said that. I can't see you guys anymore. But yeah.
That's me.
All right. So that's a good one too. Is there anything else that I need in order to run an accurate CMA?
year,
I got the year. Thank you.
You need the number of bedrooms, you need the total number of baths, full bath. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah,
As
that
far as the
does.
structure is concerned.
Yeah. Total
Also
bedroom.
the year would matter.
Yep. And then one more thing that I'm missing. What else am I missing?
Is it garage?
No, garage is going to be okay, but keep in mind, 1 story and 2 story. So I got all the stuff that I need. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug it into a CMA and run a CMA just to see where these numbers are. And I'm going to show you what's going to happen here in a minute. Okay. So now let me scroll down. So I got, let's see, when did this expire and when was this listed? So 2021, they had it listed for 525. At least I know what the price is they had it listed for. It's 3,300 square feet, 2014. Shiny, is that accurate information so far?
yes, it's all good. But
Awesome.
it's not the current one.
No, I know. Yeah. And I don't want to look at yours because I don't want to cheat, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
All right. So I'm not going to look at yours yet. All right. Now I am going to, because I did see you have something active or somebody has something active. So here's what I got. My criteria that I'm using is active, active contingent, active kickout, active option, pending, and closed. And I'm going to go with 0 to 90. It's a default. I'm going to go pending 0 to 90. And the reason I'm doing that is because it just depends on how many lease properties are out there with that information. There is
Ethan, what is kick out?
kick out is we can go over that in a future class, Gita. But kick out is basically when you have a contingent offer on the sale of another property. Make sense? So if you have a contingent offer, a buyer has submitted an offer on a sale property, not a lease property, and that shouldn't be there anyway, but on a sale property, and they're gonna, it's like you can keep it active as a kick out, meaning that if you get another offer in, you can kick that contingent offer out. That's what that means.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Hey, Shiny, I forgot to add the subdivision. What was the subdivision on this one? Was it Woodbridge?
Woodbridge, yes.
Okay. All right. I know exactly where that is. All right. So what I did was keep in mind your wild cards. Always know which your wild cards are. What are your wild cards in the MLS search? Does anybody know?
Asterisk.
Asterisk. Thank you. Perfect. And we're doing a property subtype of single family residential. So now I got, if you notice on the bottom, hopefully you guys can see it, it's 36 listings, right? So that's a lot of listings to kind of navigate through and come up with an accurate CMA. One thing I'm missing is Woodbridge may be in other neighborhoods. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to hit Wiley on this. And what happened just when I did that? It went down to 15 matches. Now, the only thing is that Woodbridge is also in Saxe. So guess what? I'm going to add Saxe in here only because I know it. And it automatically came up to 29. So the way, if you, and this goes back to understanding your market, right? If you know Woodbridge well enough, you know that Woodbridge is a subdivision that is split in the eastern side of Dallas area, right? It's in Wiley and half of it is in Saxe. So just to be on the safe side, I'm like, you know what? Let me go ahead and add Wiley and I'm going to add Saxe. Shiny, what was the square footage? 3,300?
3345, yes.
All right. So how far underneath 3,300 and how far above 3,300 should we go? Any thoughts? How about we do
About
300?
200, 200 less and 200 above.
Actually, I was going to do 3,000 to
3,000 to 3,500.
let's do 3,700. Let's see what happens. And let me do this real quick. I got 8 matches. So that's a pretty good number. Am I going to go with that? Should I go for a little bit more? I think we're comfortable with that. I think I'm comfortable with that. What do you guys think? Right?
Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you. So next, what's the next thing, right? So now you got your CMA. I mean, you got your initial CMA matches, 8 properties. You got 33,000 to 3,700 square feet. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull up my results. And this is going to be an MLS class. Keep in mind, my filters are a lot more than yours, probably, because you're not going to see, and I've showed you guys how to do this, where you can go in and add additional columns by just clicking on right next to the space, next to the column, and just pulling up additional fields and just do an insert column. And you can do that at any point in time. So now I got 1, 2, 3, 4 active, 4 pending. I am going to find out and run a quick CMA. And what I'm doing now is I'm just going to run a quick CMA. But keep in mind, I also have my my price per square footage down here all the way at the end. And I can see really quickly, and I'm just doing a quick glance. Without running a CMA, anybody, any ideas on where the actives are and where the leased are? Can anybody see that? You guys notice the last 4
Yes,
are,
yeah.
yeah, the last 4 are your leased, and your first 4 are your actives. What do you guys see? What's the challenge here?
We can easily see the closed ones, the closed price, the bottom 4 are closed.
Yep,
And
but
we
just-
don't see anything on the upper one. So that's
Yeah.
The
still,
listing price and the closed price.
No, yeah, but if you look at the next to last column, so I have, not only do I have that, I have the days on the market. What's interesting here, what do you guys see? And this is, again, goes back to the trend in the market, right? What do you see? I'm going to just the 4 on the bottom that are closed, right? I have 43 days, 7 days, 6 days, and 36 days, right? Now I want somebody to share with me, what are the 4 days on the market for the active ones? Anybody see that? 79, 23, 108, and
Yes.
0.
Yes.
right?
yeah.
Guess
Mhm.
what?
Correct.
Look at the prices, 97 cents, 91, 102, and 94. Whereas my sold or leased are $1.03, 80,
Yes.
80, and 97. And guess what? Those that were 80 cents went within a week. So what's the common?
Yes.
The better the price, the better your numbers, right? I'm going to run a
Correct.
I'm running a quick CMA on this. And in the interest of time, I'm just, and keep in mind, today I'm just going over a lot of stuff. I'm going to go over it quickly. And the reason is because a lot of this should already be part of some of the other classes we've taught. So, because I do want to get into the sample lease listing agreement today, if I can. So now when I look at the average here, my average on the actives is 96 cents a square foot. And my average on the leased is 90 cents a square foot. So one thing, Shiny, I don't see
A
your
quick question, Ketan. I did not see because the Chinese listing, it is not showing up. Why?
I was actually going to ask that same question to Shiny. So let's see what's going on with it. Didn't
This
come.
is actually single family sale listing, not lease listing.
So that other one is a sale listing. Okay. Gotcha, gotcha. And that's why. That makes sense then. Perfect. Thank you.
I was telling you first.
right,
When
so-
you selected the residential lease, I said it's no.
Yeah, no. All right. So Shiny, just curious, are you planning
But
on putting
still-
this up for
Yes, yes, Ketan, but still it's on rent. I can check if it's on the right rental price.
No. So the one you have, let me go back in. I'm gonna see. Okay, so now that we have the numbers, somebody put it on the chat or I'll put it in. What do we say? It's 96 cents for the actives and 90 cents for the solds. I mean for the lease, right? So we got all that detail. That's all I need for now. I'm gonna go back in, Shiny. I'm gonna go look at your property one more time and see where it is. It's 205 Hogue, right?
Yes, 205 Hog. Yes.
Oh, it's up for sale, is what it is. Okay, gotcha. So yep, this is up for sale. So you got it for sale, and just so I understand, you're gonna put it up for lease as well? Is that right?
It has been leased.
Oh, it already has been leased. Okay,
Yes,
okay.
and it's been leased for 3180.
All right, let's do the math. 3180, right? So what's the square footage? 3345?
Yes.
3345 multiplied by, if I go with this lease, so you know what? You're doing fantastic on this one. So if I go with the least average, it's 3010 and 3345 multiplied by 0.96. If I go with the active average, it's 3211. And where are you again, Shiny? You are at
3180.
Perfect numbers. You see what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Awesome. You're good to go. So if I
Ketan, can you show the comparative market analysis once again, the page
yeah, of course.
that you
Yeah. Let me pull it up again. Give me 1 second. Where was it? Right here. Okay, and I'm going to do a quick CMA. Remember, it's the quick CMA tab. Quick CMA button is what we just pulled. And this is really, so what I do here, guys, is I do this as a quick CMA only because I want to be able to just see exactly in a bird's eye view of what everything looks like. Does that make sense? Right? This gives me, and all I do is I just go down here and look at the average leased and average closed. That's it. All right. Any questions on the CMA side of this? Now, keep in mind, this is recorded, so you can always come back to it if you need to.
So Ketan, you said the average was for the closed one.
Mhm.
We are looking at closed one, right? So the
Yeah.
average is 90
Yeah.
cents per.
Yeah. So I put it in chat. So my average
Yes.
closed is 3,000 on this property. If I were to extrapolate it, and come up with the market analysis, my average closed is 3,000. My average active would put this at 3,200. If I'm listing this property, where am I listing at? Anybody, any ideas? I just put it on the market. I mean, I just put it on chat.
3190.
3010.
3195. 3195. I would probably put it on 3195, but there's a caveat to this. What is my caveat? We've talked about it a few minutes ago. What is my caveat to this? How about
I think like if you put a little lower than average, then you will lease it faster than anybody else.
bingo. Very good, Nina. Thank you. And
You're
that is exactly what I'm talking about. Here is
Hey, Ketan, a quick question. I know this is for a residential lease, and for a sale, it probably would matter. But do we really need to compare single story with single story and single story with, double story with like
so-
2 levels with 2 levels?
Yeah. So I did that only because remember, so here's the thing, Rishi, right? So now that I had the square footage as 3,000 or at least above 3,000, I automatically shifted my gear and made it into a 2-story. But I didn't even use 2-story as my criteria. Make sense? Because the square footage is big enough to where I'm not going to find too many single stories. However, if the square footage was 2,300, 2,400, 2,500, then I would additionally use that criteria of single story or 2-story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because yeah, it does because the per square foot is very different on a single story
Very
and a
good.
double
Yes.
story for the same.
Nope,
Yeah.
absolutely. And the only reason I didn't is because on a lease, it doesn't make much of a difference. But
Mhm.
here's what it is, right? Is in this case, it was already 3,000 square feet. It was 3,400 square feet, right? So I already had that information ready to go, which I know, and this just comes from experience more than anything else. You just know that, square footage that size, it's always most often going to be a two-story. Whereas if you're at that borderline, which is 23, 24, 2,500 square feet, you might want to add that additional criteria of single story and two-story. Now, keep in mind, if I had 15 listings, yeah, then I would add additional criteria because I don't want to go through 15 listings to figure out what my
Okay.
average is going
Okay.
to be.
So my question is like I know for sure like for 2,400, 2,200, there is a whole lot of difference between a per square footage price on a single versus a double. Does it really matter for a residential lease as well?
Yeah, not necessarily. So I would number one, I would do square footage. If the property is 2,300 square feet, then I would go to 2,000 and 2,600. Make sense?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
use that as my criteria. And then if that 2,000 to 2,600 pulled up 30 properties, then yeah, then at that point I'll say, okay, what is my property? What is my subject property? Is it a single story or is it a story?
Yeah.
And based on that, I would use that information to pull the details from there.
Of course. Yeah.
All right. All right. So I want to move on to the listing agreement only because we got about 25 minutes to cover as much as we can on the listing agreement side. So now you have your price, you have your information. What would be the next thing you do? You're going to share this information with your landlord and say, um, uh, uh, you're gonna share that information with your landlord and you're gonna say, hey, whatchamacallit, this is where I think we need to be. But as Nina suggested, but if you are wanting to get this leased right away, I would put it at maybe 3,095, 3,100. All right. So you got all the numbers. You guys can scroll up on the chat, look at the numbers we came up with, and just kind of memorize which ones we talked about. We talked about the active ones. We talked about the sold ones. Now, actually, we started with the sold, or leased, I should say. Then we went to the actives. We came up with our average, and then we came up with an aggressive average. So those are the four numbers you're going to work with. All right. Now,
What if the landlord doesn't agree with you?
I know that's going
Just
to be.
want to give a chance. Okay, 1 week do this because at present I'm doing.
I know.
Every
I
1
know.
week, 2 week I'm reducing 1,000.
Yeah, because your landlord thinks they know the market better than you do. Is that true? And I don't mean it in a bad way. Okay. What happens is that you keep in mind the landlord doesn't have all this detail. The other thing is if you run CMAs on a regular basis, and if you are familiar with what the market is doing in certain areas, then you're going to have a much better insight.
I gave him all information.
I know. And so here's the only suggestion, Geeta, that you can come up with is at that point, you just tell them, okay, we'll do what you want to do. But you know what, if I don't have any showings or if we're just stuck on the market for a couple of weeks, would you mind if you and I got together and went over those numbers one more time and reduced it as we maybe should? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I did the same thing 1 hour ago.
Yep, and that's the only thing you can do. You can say, hey, you know what, and keep in mind, you don't have to remind them that you told them so, right? Because that's never going to go well with your landlords. But what you want to do is say, hey, remember that conversation that we had when we first put it on the market? And here is the most important thing. Put everything in writing. All right. When you send something, don't just send, oh, I think we should put it at 3,095, or I think we should put it at 3,195. You know what? Follow it up and say, hey, based on our conversation. Remember that word, based on our conversation. Okay. Remember that because you want to say, hey, look, I'm just going to follow up and I'm going to send you an email of where my numbers are. The reason is because in about 2 weeks, you're going to go back to that text message and say, hey, I do remember telling you that we needed to put it at this price, and then next thing you know, you're at that price, but it's 3 weeks later or it's a month later. You've lost a whole month in the market because of that. All right. You guys good?
Yeah.
Awesome. let's go to the next thing, right? Kavita, let me pull up that, the field is all the way in the box. It's $LIVSQFT.
Yes, I got that one, but it doesn't show me like the dollar value that is showing in your CMA view.
Oh,
It's showing.
I don't know.
No worries, not important.
Yep, no worries. All right, sounds good. All right, so now we did that. Let me get back into my presentation mode real quick. Start from the beginning. We don't want to do that. So we're done the CMA. Now we're gonna go ahead and send your CMA to your clients. Provide 3 price suggestions. I don't provide 3 price suggestions. I just provide 2. I'm gonna provide an average and I'm gonna provide an aggressive price. Let them come back to you if they want it to be higher. Does that make sense? So in other words, you provide them 2. You provide them an average price and you provide them with the less than average. However, this is very important to know. That is based on the market trends today. Okay? Because the trend is price per square footage is going lower and lower, you want to be aggressive. In the opposite way, if the market was better, then you might give them an average and say, hey, you know what, we can try out this number and see what happens. So you got to understand where the market is, where the market conditions are, in order to provide them the right information about where they should list the price. All right. Next one is we got your listing terms. Finalize the lease terms for the listing agreement. So the listing agreement for the lease, you want your commissions, the listing period. I'm going to go over that in the lease itself. Okay. So let's go ahead and get into the lease, sample lease, and all the documents I'm going to share with you guys today. So all of this, can you guys see my folder here? It's my training lease package folder. All of this stuff is going to be in your.
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome. So this is going to be in your, what do you call it? In back agent, probably later in the next few days. And then as we go through some of this stuff, I'm going to continue adding all the information that we need. I'm going to go into the agreement, and I'm not going to go into zip forms because you guys have already had the zip forms class when we did the new agent orientation. Here's my IABS, ReKonnection, and then admin and 9. So take a picture of this because I want you guys to make sure that you guys have this. The designated broker of the firm, you can use my name, but you can also use Praveen's name. All right. So Praveen is actually the correct one for this year. So you can change this out to Praveen's name. This is one of my old samples. So I'm just using that still. And then of course, make sure you fill out your information as well.
Ketan,
yes.
I have a question. This IABS, I submitted last year on your name. Do I need to change to Praveen name now?
No, that we're both. So even though Praveen's broker record, you can use either one of our names, and that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but if you're creating a brand new one, then use Praveen's name. Does that make sense?
Yes, got it.
Yeah. So
And how to change Praveen's number and name here?
Oh, just create a new zip form in zip forms. Just create a new IABS.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's in the back agent as well.
Yeah, or in back. I think you're right. You're right, Raji. It is in back agent with Praveen's information already on there.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So that is the IABS. You need that for every one of your transactions. You represent the landlord, so make sure the landlord signs. Now we're going to go into the listing agreement, and I have it. Sample residential listing agreement, I believe, is this one. All right. So it is already filled out for you. It is filled out to the best of my abilities at this point. I'm not going to go over. I'm going to go over it pretty quickly because this is going to be available to you, in fact, in the next couple of days. I'm going to start putting all this stuff into that back agent, into a brand new folder, just for you guys. All right. So the landlord would be landlord 1. If there's a second landlord, second line would be landlord 2. The address here, remember that this address is specific to the landlord's physical address where they are. Okay. Not the property address, unless the property address is the only address available. So in other words, if your landlord is an investor, right, and they are out in California, then the address here should be the California address. Make sure you populate your mobile information for the landlord. Make sure you populate the email for the landlord, because When that comes through on the system in zip forms, it automatically knows who to email for the signatures. All right.
I have
Ari,
a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When I signed this form,
Huh?
they were here,
Yep, that's fine. Yeah.
but
and
now
that's-
they moved.
Yep, and that's okay. That's okay. You don't necessarily need to update it, but if you wanted to update it, you can. As long as at the time of it, and really the main thing is the address doesn't, it's not necessary, but it's good to have it just for your records. Does that make sense? Right, so it's there just for your records, and you know, if you ever need it, you know where to find them, hypothetically. Okay. Let's say, for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say the tenant moves in, they've moved to another state. They have a new address. The tenant moves in and they get a certified mail from the tax office. And they don't know where to send it. They don't have the information. They may not have the information for the landlord. They may not have the address. Then you can at least talk to the landlord and say, hey, either you go call the tenant and give them the information, or do you want me to share your information with them? Technically, go with the first thing, which is let the landlord deal with it. You don't want to have to deal with it, all right? But that information's there just for you guys. If let's say, for example, the tenant sends you directly you know, a bunch of mail that belongs to the landlord. How do you get it to them? You have to deliver it somewhere. So you go in, verify the address, call them, text them, whatever, and then send it on to them, or have them, you know, pick it up or whatever at that point. That's the only reason for it. The broker, always ReKonnection LLC. The address is here, zip code, city. This is my information. So my number. So you guys are going to change this to your number, your mobile number, and your email address. All right. So this is done as if it's for me, okay? Lot, block, subdivision information needs to be updated and accurate. In other words, you're going to get that information from where? Either from the contract, or you're going to get it from the closing disclosure, or you're going to get it from tax records. Make sure everything is accurate every time. The city, the county name, and then here where it says Texas known as, this is where you add the actual property address for the one that's going to be listed. All right. Next line item is if there's going to be any non-real estate items that are added to the lease that are going to be part of the lease. And what are the most common? 3?
Washer, dryer.
And refrigerator.
Dryer, refrigerator.
You got it. I'm going to give you guys a tip. You know, if the landlord is still there, he's planning on moving out, and he asks you, should I keep the washer, dryer, and refrigerator in the property for the tenants to use? What should be your response typically?
First of all, I would say no, because the maintenance problem is there then.
No, exactly. As long as you can, and as long as the landlord is comfortable with it, and as long as there's not any, you know, if they're going to move everything, then might as well move the washer, dryer, and the refrigerator, especially if that washer, dryer, refrigerator is only a year old, because the challenge is going to be that the tenants are not going to use it as well, and they're not going to maintain it as well as the landlord will, you know, considering it's his own personal property. So the best suggestion is always let them know to go ahead and just take it with them. Don't forget your exclusions. If the landlord is taking a chandelier, or if they're taking curtains, the best thing to do is to go ahead and remove it before you even put it on the market. But if they don't want to do that and they want to wait, then make sure you have that and disclose that into the listing agreement as well. Okay.
Here I have a question, Ketan. Usually, you know, like the properties with washer, dryer, refrigerator will go lease faster, or without this?
No, and that's a good question, Raji. So
yeah, non-real.
Yeah. So what it is Texas, most properties today still do not have washer, dryer, refrigerators in place. Whereas when you go to Florida, you go to New Jersey, you go to New York, a lot of the properties already include washer, dryer, and refrigerator. So
otherwise it is very hard to lease it.
Yeah, no, especially in those, it varies state by state. Whereas in Texas, it really doesn't matter. But in most cases, people will buy their own stuff. And in reality, I mean, I've had this situation where the tenant's like, man, those washer dryers are not the most upkept, you know, piece of, you know, personal property. And so they've asked us to move it out, you know. and they want their own stuff, right? So ideally, yeah, you know, if we can prevent from having those personal items at the property, it's a liability at the end of the day, not as much of a liability, but just take it out, you know, and advise your landlords that way.
Okay.
The lease terms, I don't do really 6 months. It's in there just in case my landlord, you know, if we've been on the market for 4 months, have no activity whatsoever, and at least I have it in there, so I don't have to go and change the listing agreement. So I do span it from 6 to 24 months. I try not to do more than 24 months, only because, you know, I mean, I don't know where the market's going to be. And I'd rather just keep it this way and leave it this way going into it, and not worry about it down the road. All right. So 6 to 24 months is your general lease terms. The listing begins and ends usually 3 months is what I normally do. I will leave it up to you guys. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this is what I do. You guys can do however you want to. This is just broker compensation that we use. Our broker compensation varies from 50 to 80%. You can, you know, and keep in mind, this is the most important thing. I know we've had a lot of challenges recently where in back agent, we don't see the cooperating brokers payment and all that stuff. This right here, the 60% is the total lease commission. Do not put in there 30% because your landlord still owes for the cooperating broker, meaning the tenant's agent. Okay. So if you're doing a 30-30 split, then it's 60. If you're doing a 35-35 split, then it's 70. If you're doing a 40-40 split, it's 80. If you're doing a 40-30 split, it's 70, meaning if you're getting a little bit more and the other agent's going to get a little less, you got to disclose it. So remember that. But in here, that total amount, which includes both the landlord agent and the tenant's agent, that needs to be the number that you come up with on line number 1. Okay.
Generally, I have a question here, Ketan. So generally, I mean, just I know it is depending on the property to property, of course, but so generally 60% of the full month rent do we put on under paragraph 5 and A first one?
So, no. So I can't tell you what to put in there. Does that
Yes,
make
yeah.
All right?
Yes, yeah, I understand that. Yeah. But example, I'm asking you example.
Yeah. It is for both sides. Remember that. It is always for both sides.
Okay.
The 60% there is just an example. Okay. So leave it
Okay,
at,
yeah.
and that way we can move on. But yeah, that is just an example. You guys can, you remember, commissions are negotiable, so you guys can do whatever you want with that.
So when, yeah, another question here. Let's say like, yeah, I know I saw the example. So in the MLS, I see like 35%. What does it mean? 35% of what we get, or 35% of?
No, that's going to the other
agent.
That is
other
the
agent,
other
correct. Yeah. So out of the 60%, the 35% goes to the other agent?
Yeah, but we don't know how much the other agent's getting either. We don't know what the listing agent's getting because they may be getting 100%. They may be getting 80%, right? But out of that 80%, they're sharing 35% is what they're saying. Yeah.
Okay.
So Roger,
Here I'm not clear actually.
Rajita,
So
I will talk to you later about this.
Okay.
It's a small thing.
okay.
Yeah. No worries. Yeah. So, and we can talk offline, so that way we can move on and hopefully get this done in the next 10-15 minutes. Other compensation, the only other thing that I have on here is the $100 for lease renewal. Okay. Compensation for sale, you don't have to add this. And to be honest with you, a lot of landlords do not like this at all. This is, again, just an example. But if for any reason, if you were to sell the property, or if the tenant that you had under this property, you know, ends up buying it, you can put in a number here. I will be honest with you, I don't anymore. Just, you know, and most of my clients, most of my landlords will come back to me and ask me to help them if they want me to facilitate a closing for a sale transaction. So I just leave it at that. The reimbursable expenses, you can, if you wanted to. I did another example of $100. It's actually $50, right? So the REK transaction fee but if it's both sides, it's $100. So again, negotiable. You can put in anything you want to. On my protection period, I don't add anything in there. The protection period really is if
Hey Ketan.
Yeah.
Ketan, on that 4%, if you don't put that and you don't check that option, do you check that option and put 0 in there, or what do you do?
I don't check it at all. I don't check it
Oh,
anymore.
you don't check it at all.
Used
Okay.
to.
All
Yeah,
right.
I used to, only because it confuses a lot of landlords, and what happens,
Yeah.
Rishi, is the landlord comes back and says, well, I don't want to sell it with you. I got somebody else to sell it. You
No,
know
no,
what I
I
mean?
get it. But if you put 0 in there, then that also doesn't make sense, right? Because then you are like agreeing to 0 commission.
Yeah,
So
no,
I
no.
guess
So
not checking it.
yeah, I don't check it. It's an uncheck
Okay.
mark. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
reason I did this is specific to you guys today.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is just an example, and that's why I wanted to show. But and everybody has their own business model of how they want to do their real estate. So I leave it up to you guys to kind of really just decide how you guys want to do that.
I want to understand this reimbursable expenses.
Yeah, so I mean, so here's some other ones.
You
that are-
will give me back?
No, the landlord will give you back.
Yeah, landlord will give me.
Well,
Why?
no. So if, let's say, for example, what's a very common one that we charge for? I just put it in chat.
Okay.
Advertisement.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Got it. Okay.
All right. Yeah, photography. We charge for photography. So
I actually direct ask the landlord direct pay to,
Yeah.
I don't get into that.
no, and that's the best way to do it, Geeta. That is
Yeah.
actually one of
Because
the. Yeah.
after that, the quality was not good. This
Yeah,
pictures
yeah.
were not,
Oh,
so
you
I don't
spot
get
on.
into that.
Geeta, that is awesome. That is exactly why you don't do that. So good for you. But so that's why, if you notice, I didn't put any of the other reimbursable expenses. I only put in transaction fee. You understand why? Because you're absolutely right. And I'm glad you brought it up, because that photography, what if they don't like photography, and what if they don't want to pay for it? The best thing to do is say, hey, you know what? Do you have your own pictures that you want me to use? I can take my own pictures. And ideally on a lease, honestly, the best thing to do is grab your iPhone. If you have a decent iPhone or any of the smartphone devices, they take some phenomenal pictures. And do not do it vertically, do it landscape, if you know what I mean. So make sure you're doing landscape, and look at the pictures before you leave the property, just to make sure that they came out okay. Happens all the time, so just a little bit of tips that I want you guys to kind of be aware of when you're doing this stuff, right? County, I don't know why this is still in there. It doesn't really make any difference, but I do cover myself, and I just went ahead and added Dallas, Collin, Tarrant, and Denton counties. So that's in there as well. The next line is listing services. Always make sure that the the landlord wants this listed on the MLS, and that is check mark number 1. And you will list this property in how many days after you have an executed lease? Anybody know? What is your requirement according to the listing agreement?
1 day, just 1 day.
Nope, not 1 day. It's in there. You can see it. You can read right there.
5 days.
You got it. It tells you right here, guys, 5 days. All right. Make sure you guys are reading the listing agreements end to end the first time. You don't need to do it twice or 3 times. Just make sure you guys are reading. Really, in real estate, one of the most important things, and this is just a sidebar for you guys right now, one of the most important things is read the listing agreements, or read all the contracts. You have to. In order to understand real estate and understand what you're actually explaining to your clients and everything else, you have to kind of, that's just basics at the end of the day. You have to read the contracts, guys. All right. Access to the property, scheduling, broker bay. So there's 2 different systems. We have showing systems or showing time, and we have broker bay. We use broker bay because it is free and it is part of your MLS dues. So it works out really, really well. The next line.
Is it, bro, in Austin? Is it showing time?
Yeah, no, that's a good, Rama. That's a good question. I think you guys are still on showing time. Broker bay is just here on the
Dallas.
Yeah, it's on the MLS here in North Texas. That's why. But
Okay.
for Raji, for you in Houston, I think no, you're not in Houston. Are you Houston?
I am in Dallas. Actually, I have a question.
Yeah.
Does it work? My key in other areas like Austin or Houston?
No, you have to get membership in those areas for your key to work.
Okay. Got it. Yeah.
And then broker is authorized to place a key box on the property. I'm assuming that is always the case. If not, then, obviously advise your clients that that's the best opportunity and that's the best chance of getting all of the showings available. However, there are times where, a landlord may come back and say, I got a tenant in there and they don't want to show it, from sometime to sometime, and they want to be there for all showings and all that stuff. you know what, that's perfectly okay. Just kind of let them know that it may take a while to list it. I mean, to find a property. I mean, find and you know, the next tenants and so forth. The next line, cooperating with other brokers. Remember this one, Raji and Geeta? This is, remember where we had 60%? It's a 30-30 split. That's all that means, is a 30-30 split. All right. So now if your compensation with your landlord is agreed upon at 70% and you're going to take 35, where would this line be for you guys? Anybody know?
Yeah, under A,
Instead of
1,
30,
No, what would it be? Instead of 30, what would it be?
35.
35.
35, exactly. If you're taking 80% and you're keeping 50 of it, where would this line be?
30.
You got it. Good. So that's, I want you guys to remember that, because the calculation needs to be accurate when we're doing this, and it really needs to be accurate when we're doing back agent. All this means is, of whatever compensation you're getting, if you're getting 50%, and of that 50%, you're going to share 30%, that means you're going to get 20%. Remember that, okay?
I have one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What if I'm not charging anything and giving the 40% to the other agent?
Then you're going to have 40%.
And what is your fees, broker
then-
fees? That
then
was
you-
my mistake last time.
Yeah, then you just add the broker fees back up here in the transaction fees for the
Oh, yes. Yes.
reimbursable expenses. You can keep this at 40% up here because that's what you're doing. And then here it would be 40% because you're giving all of it back to the other agent. And then your reimbursable expenses will be the $100 or $50 for the transaction fee or whatever you want to charge.
Makes sense.
All right, intermediary status. That just means that if you have an unrepresented tenant or somebody comes off a Zillow or somebody reaches out to you that's a friend of a friend, you can technically represent, and under our brokerage, we do allow it. Most brokerages today still don't do this. And that is completely their business practice. I'm okay with that. We do, and this is how we do it. So we do allow intermediary status. You have to disclose. And what do you need if you're going to be doing an intermediary status, guys? You remember the document?
But if the tenant says, no, I don't want to be represented,
No, but you still have to fill out this form, intermediary relationship status form. Okay, it's in zip forms. You guys can look up for intermediary. You'll find this document, because you still have to disclose that you're representing the landlord, but you still got to disclose it. They are just, all they are is unrepresented. That's all that means. Okay. Next, I'm not going over anything that's really, this is broker's authority. Just know what you are and what you should be doing as part of your roles and responsibilities in putting this on the market, advertising it, placing a for lease sign, providing comparative market analysis, publishing all the information to other brokers, Zillow, whatever, accept and deposit money. That doesn't really apply to you guys, but these are some of the roles and responsibilities that apply to you if you guys are going to be doing this as a brokerage. And then also it goes into landlord representations. All right. And then landlord's additional promises, meaning that he's going to cooperate with you. He's going to facilitate showings. He's not going to enter into another listing agreement. He's going to provide any copies, rental agreements that may be related to the property and that you might need as useful. The last part of this goes into broker is not responsible or liable. Make sure you read the limitations of liability. And I'm not going over things that I'm going to expect you guys to read, okay? So I'm only going over the more important and the more of the subjective pieces to this, right? So read through the broker is responsible and what they're not responsible. Read through what the landlord agrees to protect. That is very important. The last part of this is the IABS, and you need to make sure that you have the addendum regarding rental flood insurance. Okay. That is the flood. I mean, sorry, the addendum regarding the rental flood disclosure. That needs to be, and I know maybe some of you have not, you guys may be the lucky ones, but we kick back every transaction that doesn't have this in there. All right. Because it's part of our compliance. We got to make sure that we have it put in there together. And then the last part that's very important is this is what you and the landlord are going to discuss as far as lease terms, right? These are lease requirements by the landlord. The best way to do this, guys, is simply just write it down. Say, hey, we know when the monthly rent is due. We're going to charge late charges on the 5th. It's going to be initial $50 and it's going to be $20 a day thereafter. Animals, if they allow it, it's going to be with a certain restriction, like small dogs, under 30 pounds, as an example. What I would do is you can use this sample, send it over to them, and then say, hey, I want you to review the requirements that are needed by the landlord. Make any adjustments to that before I send you the official final document. Make sense? In other words, you're telling them that, hey, this is what I'm putting in there right now. Just fix it up as to what you need for it long-term. With the lease, these are the lease conditions. And next week, we're going to actually go over the whole lease. All right. Then you have your security deposit.
Hey, Ketan,
Yeah,
on that animal and pet thing,
Yeah.
I've seen like some people use some website called POSCO to sort of define like, what should be the security deposit or the monthly rent for a pet.
What is it called?
It's called POSCO. It sort of like tells you what kind of a pet it is and like what should be the appropriate security deposit for it.
I tell you what, can you post it on chat?
Sure.
Yeah, post it on chat and then text me with that as well, because in case I forget to take it off the chat. Yeah, if you don't mind, Rishi, post it on chat. I would like to see that. And then who maintains the yard, the repairs. So those things right there, paragraph 2020 is really the lease requirements by the landlord. Okay. I'm going to look at this. It's called POSCO. Okay. Hang on. I'm going to type it in my phone so that way I have it for POSCO. Give me a second, guys. Thanks. That's good to know. I did not know about that one, Rishi. So I appreciate that. All right. And again, the lease terms that these are, and keep in mind, these are changing. They're flexible. They're going to be based on what you send out to the landlord. The landlord's going to come back and make some changes. And then even then you might have the lease created, but the lease may not have all the stipulations, or the tenant may come back with other changes as well. So just remember that thing. And we are to the bottom of it. And don't forget, you got to get your signatures. In here, it's going to be the broker's associate signature, your date. You can date it through zip forms. And then, of course, the landlord's names on here as well. All right. I know I went through this pretty fast. The reason is because I'm going to share this document through Backagent. I'm going to create a whole new folder with just everything that we're going to go over in the next 3 weeks. Unfortunately, guys, I do have a hard stop. But hopefully did this help? I know we rushed through it very fast and I apologize, but hopefully you guys got most of this through the whole thing.
I like the address, the city name.
For which one?
You get the example.
Oh,
You put the address, any city.
Yeah, I did. Oh, yeah, any city and 1, 2, 3, 4 something. I do have that somewhere. Yeah, add address. Yeah. So yeah. But all right, I gotta go. But hopefully, did this help you guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Ketan.
All right,
yes,
awesome.
thank you, Ketan. Thank
All
you.
right. This is going to be recorded, so you can always go back to it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. We're going to put it on. We're going to put it on Backagent. We'll have it on YouTube. Next week, we're going to go over the next 2 things, which is the lease itself, and we're going to go over the email write-ups. That is going to be very important because it's going to show you guys how to establish your communications going forward. Okay, so definitely bring your questions again. And we'll go from there. And then the third one is actually going to be on updating everything into Backagent. So this is going to be a 3-part series. I'm looking forward to it. I'm kind of this is one that's definitely needed, especially in today's market. All right, guys. All right.
Thank you, Ketan.
All right. Good night,
Thank
guys.
you very much.
Yeah,
Good night. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Call me.
All right. Bye.
Sure.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.